It'll be tight, but you can come in. The words caught Elias Varn off guard, hanging in the dim glow of the corridor like something fragile that might disappear if he moved too fast. He blinked down at the alien woman standing in front of him, trying to decide if he had misheard her, or if this was some kind of test. "You're serious?" he asked, his voice low and rough, echoing more than he intended in the narrow passage. The woman shifted her weight, the soft violet hue of her skin catching the faint bioluminescent veins running through the walls. Her eyes, too large, too luminous, narrowed slightly as they traced the outline of his broad shoulders, the bulk of him filling nearly half the corridor. "I wouldn't have said it if I wasn't," she replied. "But if you damage anything, you will fix it." Elias let out a short breath, something between a laugh and relief. "Fair." Behind her, the vertical slit of a doorway pulsed open with a soft, organic hum, revealing a space that looked impossibly small. He hesitated. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was calculation. He had spent the last 6 hours being turned away from every shelter tier in this city. Some had refused politely, others less so. One had sealed their door before he even reached it. A group of passing locals had crossed to the opposite side of the walkway, their glowing skin dimming slightly, a subtle but unmistakable sign of discomfort. Here, everything was built for beings lighter, narrower, more refined. And then there was him. Elias exhaled again and dipped his head slightly. "Lead the way." She stepped inside first, her movements smooth and deliberate, and he followed carefully. The doorway flexed as he entered, its organic frame stretching just enough to accommodate him before settling back with a faint, almost irritated vibration. Elias had to turn sideways, one shoulder brushing the living wall. It pulsed faintly at the contact, as if acknowledging him, or disapproving. "Does it always do that?" he muttered. "It responds to pressure," she said without turning. "It will adapt, slowly." "Good," Elias murmured. "Because I don't think I can shrink." That earned him a brief glance over her shoulder, something like confusion or maybe mild amusement. It was hard to tell with her kind. The interior was a vertical maze of narrow platforms and curved surfaces, layered upward rather than outward. Soft strands of light hung like vines from the ceiling, casting a gentle glow that shifted in slow, rhythmic pulses. The air smelled faintly metallic with an undercurrent of something sweet and unfamiliar. Elias straightened as much as the space allowed, which wasn't much. "Cozy," he said. "It is efficient," she corrected. "Right, efficiently cozy." She stopped near a slightly wider section, a central living node, he guessed, and turned to face him fully. Up close, the differences were even more apparent. Her features were delicate, almost sculpted, but there was something precise about her. Intentional, her ears tapered slightly, her skin faintly luminous beneath the surface, like light trapped under glass, and her eyes didn't blink as often as his. "My name is Lyra," she said. "Elias." "I know," she replied. He raised an eyebrow. "You do." "You have been discussed," she said simply. That wasn't reassuring. Elias scratched the back of his neck. "Let me guess. Large, disruptive, possibly dangerous." Her expression didn't change, but the faint shimmer of her skin dimmed a fraction. "Yes." He snorted. "At least they're honest." Lyra studied him for a moment longer, her gaze lingering on the heavy fabric of his worn jacket, the reinforced seams, the faint scarring along his hands, old marks, not recent. Then she turned away and gestured toward a recessed platform. "You will rest there." Elias stepped closer, eyeing the space. It was small, not impossibly so, but definitely not designed with someone like him in mind. "I might hang off the edge," he said. "Then do not roll." He let out a quiet laugh. "I'll do my best." For a moment, silence settled between them, broken only by the faint hum of the structure around them. Alive in a way he still wasn't used to. Outside, distant sounds filtered in. Soft chimes, passing voices, the rhythmic pulse of transport currents moving through the city's upper tiers. Elias lowered himself carefully onto the platform, testing its strength. It held though it dipped slightly under his weight. Lyra noticed. Her eyes narrowed again. "You are dense." "Gravity back home's a bit heavier," he said. "Builds character." She tilted her head, as if filing that away for later analysis. "Your vessel," she said after a moment. "It was seized at the docking ring." Elias' expression shifted just slightly. "Yeah. For regulatory violations." "That's one way to put it." She turned to face him again, more directly this time. "Then what is the accurate way?" He met her gaze, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. "Let's just say," Elias said slowly, "they didn't like what I was carrying." Lyra's luminous irises sharpened, curiosity cutting through her earlier hesitation. What were you carrying? Elias leaned back slightly, the faint creak of the platform echoing under him. He looked around the small space at the living walls, the soft light, the narrowness of it all. Then he looked back at her. Nothing illegal, he said, just something important. The silence that followed was different this time, heavier. Lyra held his gaze, and for the first time there was something more than caution in her expression. Interest. Outside, somewhere deeper in the city, a low, resonant signal pulsed through the structure, subtle but unmistakable. Lyra's posture stiffened. Elias noticed. What was that? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes shifted slightly, as if listening to something beyond the range of his hearing. Then quietly she said, "That means someone of authority has entered the lower tiers." Elias frowned. That bad. Lyra looked at him again, and this time there was no hesitation in her voice. Yes. The signal didn't fade, it spread, vibrating softly through the walls like a pulse traveling through something alive, something aware. Elias felt it under his palm where it rested against the curved surface beside him. That doesn't sound like a casual visit. It is not, Lyra said, already moving. She crossed the small space quickly, her movements sharper now, less fluid, controlled but urgent. A thin panel in the wall parted at her touch, revealing a narrow slit of shifting light. Symbols flickered across it in elegant, alien script, too fast for Elias to follow. "They do not come here," she murmured. "Who is they exactly?" Elias asked, pushing himself up carefully. The ceiling forced him to hunch again, his shoulders brushing faintly glowing strands overhead. Lyra hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "Enforcers of the inner court." Elias let out a low whistle. "That sounds expensive." She shot him a look. "It means someone is being hunted." "Okay," he said, lifting his hands slightly. "That definitely sounds less expensive." Her eyes flicked toward him again, sharper this time, studying his reaction, not just his words. "You should not be here," she said. "That makes two of us." Another pulse rippled through the structure, stronger this time. Somewhere outside, distant voices shifted, quieter, more cautious. The hum of the city subtly changed pitch, like an organism holding its breath. Lyra closed the panel with a swift motion. "If they are scanning, they will detect you." Elias frowned. "I thought you said this place adapts." "It does," she replied, "but not well enough to conceal you." "Wow," he muttered. "You really know how to make a guy feel special." Despite the tension, something flickered across her expression again, brief, almost involuntary. Then it vanished. "We need to reduce your profile," she said. Elias glanced down at himself, his broad frame, his heavy boots, the way he seemed to fill every line of the room. "Right," he said dryly. "Let me just fold myself in half." Lyra stepped closer, ignoring the comment, her gaze scanning him with a kind of analytical precision. She reached out, hesitated for the smallest moment, then placed her hand lightly against his arm. Her fingers barely wrapped around it. Her skin was cool, faintly luminous against his. Elias didn't move. "You are unusually structured," she said almost to herself. "Been called worse." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Your density, your muscle distribution, even your skeletal alignment, it is inefficient for this world." "Yeah," he said. "I'm starting to notice that." "No," she said quietly, looking up at him now. "It is not inefficiency, it is adaptation." He tilted his head. "To what?" She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze shifted past him toward the wall. Another pulse. Closer, this time Elias heard it too, not just the vibration, but the faint, distant sound that came with it. A kind of harmonic resonance, like multiple tones layered together with unnatural precision. Footsteps followed. Light. Controlled, too synchronized to be casual. Lyra stepped back immediately, her posture tightening. "They are scanning this sector." Elias' jaw set. "So what's the plan?" "You remain still," she said. "You do not speak. You do not move unless I tell you." "And if they knock?" "They will not knock." The words landed heavier than the signal. Before Elias could respond, a soft chime echoed from outside the dwelling, gentle, almost polite. They both froze. Elias blinked. "You were saying?" Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she moved toward the entrance, every motion precise, controlled, too controlled. The doorway pulsed faintly as she approached, responding to her presence. The chime came again. This time accompanied by a voice. "Resident of Unit 7 Delta," it said, smooth and melodic, yet carrying an unmistakable authority. "Open." Elias shifted slightly, instinctively, then caught himself. Lyra stopped just short of the door. For a moment she didn't move. Then she glanced back at him. It was subtle, but there was something new in her expression now, not just tension, recognition. "Do not speak," she whispered. Then the doorway parted. The corridor beyond was filled with light. 3 figures stood there, tall, impossibly slender, their forms draped in flowing structures that looked like liquid metal held in shape. Their skin glowed faintly beneath the surface, but their eyes were brighter than Lyra's. Sharper, colder. Each movement they made was perfectly synchronized, like reflections of the same being. Their gaze shifted immediately past Lyra. To Ilias, the pause that followed was microscopic, but it was there. Ilias felt it. One of them stepped forward slightly, its head tilting with precise curiosity. "Human," it said, not fear, not hostility, something else. Something like interest. Lyra moved just enough to block part of the view. "You are mistaken, there is no." "We are not," the figure replied calmly. Its luminous eyes remained fixed on Ilias, studying him, not as a threat, but as a variable. Ilias straightened slightly despite the low ceiling, meeting that gaze without flinching. "Yeah," he said quietly, "that's me." Lyra's breath caught barely audible. The other 2 figures shifted subtly, their attention sharpening. A faint ripple passed through the air around them, technology Ilias realized, scanning, measuring, evaluating. "Unexpected," the first one said. "Story of my life," Ilias muttered. For a fraction of a second, just a fraction, the nearest enforcer's expression changed. Confusion, then it was gone. "You arrived without clearance," the figure continued. "Your vessel is under investigation." Ilias shrugged slightly. "I got that impression. You carry no visible authorization," it said. "Nope." "And yet," the figure added, its voice lowering just a fraction, "you remain unafraid." Ilias tilted his head. "Should I be?" Another pause, this one longer. Behind the enforcers, the corridor's light seemed to dim slightly, as if the structure itself was reacting. Lyra stood perfectly still now, but Ilias could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands had tightened just slightly at her sides. The enforcer stepped one fraction closer. "You do not understand where you are," it said. Ilias met its gaze. "Then maybe," he said, his voice steady, "you should explain it to me." Silence, then unexpectedly. The enforcer's eyes flickered. Not with anger, not with threat, but with something far more unusual, intrigue. The silence stretched so long it began to feel deliberate, like a test neither side had agreed to take, but neither could walk away from. The enforcer's gaze remained locked on Ilias, luminous and unblinking, while something unseen hummed faintly in the air between them. Scanners recalibrating, systems cross-referencing, probabilities collapsing into certainty. Then all at once the tone of the moment shifted. "We have identified you," the enforcer said. Lyra's breath faltered. Ilias didn't move. "That's so. You are registered within restricted archives," the figure continued. Its voice no longer neutral but edged with something closer to recognition. "Human designation, Ilias Varn." A faint ripple passed through the 2 figures behind it, subtle but unmistakable. Recognition. Lyra's head turned sharply toward him. "You told me you were a cargo hauler." Ilias exhaled slowly, his eyes still on the enforcer. "I was." "That is incomplete," the enforcer said. "Yeah," Ilias muttered, figured that might come up. The air seemed to tighten, the structure itself dimming slightly as if listening. "State your classification," the enforcer demanded. Ilias was quiet for a moment, not hesitant, just choosing. Then he spoke. "I used to build exits," he said. "Places people could get out when everything else failed. Collapsing stations, failing colonies. Situations your kind would probably label statistically unrecoverable." Lyra stared at him now, something unreadable in her expression. "You are a crisis engineer," the enforcer said. "Was," Ilias corrected, "retired." "You are not retired," the figure replied. Ilias gave a faint, humorless smile. "Funny, that's what everyone keeps saying." Another pause, but this one carried weight, because now they understood. "And worse, they cared. The cargo you carried," the enforcer continued, its voice lowering, "was not material." Ilias didn't answer. "You were transporting data," it said. "Structural maps, emergency bypass protocols, core access pathways to multiple interstellar infrastructures." Lyra's eyes widened, the faint glow beneath her skin flickering unevenly. "That is impossible," she whispered. "Those systems are sealed to all but the inner court." "Not all," the enforcer said softly, its gaze never leaving Ilias. Ilias finally shifted his weight, the small space creaking faintly under him. "Look," he said, "I wasn't planning on using any of it. I was just delivering. You were intercepted, the enforcer interrupted. Yeah, Elias said, I noticed. Silence fell again, but now it was different, heavier, because now the shape of the situation was clear. Lyra stepped back slowly, her gaze moving between Elias and the enforcers. You brought this here, she said quietly, not accusing, not afraid, just stating it. Elias met her eyes. I didn't know this was where they'd take me, he said. But now you are here, she replied. Another pulse moved through the structure, stronger this time, resonating deep within the walls. The enforcer's head tilted slightly. Your presence here is no longer incidental, it said. Elias frowned, meaning. The two figures behind it shifted forward, their luminous forms aligning in perfect symmetry. You have entered a system on the brink of internal fracture, the enforcer said. Your knowledge represents leverage. Lyra's posture stiffened. No, she said sharply, he is not part of this. The enforcer turned its gaze to her, and for the first time something like authority pressed visibly into the space. Princess Lyra of the Outer Line, it said. The words landed like impact. Elias blinked. Princess. Lyra didn't look at him. Her hands clenched slightly at her sides. You were not meant to be found, the enforcer continued. Yet you chose to harbor a variable of extreme significance. I chose to help someone who needed shelter, she said, her voice steady despite the tension beneath it. And in doing so, the enforcer replied, you have altered the balance. Elias let out a slow breath. Okay, I feel like I missed a very important conversation somewhere. Lyra finally looked at him. There was no hesitation now. No distance, just truth. My family was removed, she said. Quietly, without war, without announcement. The inner court maintains control, but not without resistance. Elias processed that, then nodded slightly. So palace politics got it. This is not trivial, she said. Never said it was, he replied, just familiar. The enforcer stepped forward again. You possess the means to disrupt or reinforce critical systems across this world, it said to Elias. With your cooperation, stability can be maintained. Elias raised an eyebrow. And if I don't cooperate? A pause, then. Instability will escalate, the enforcer said. And this individual, its gaze flicked briefly to Lyra, will be eliminated as a variable. The words hit harder than any threat. The room seemed to shrink. Elias went still. Then very slowly he stepped forward. The confined space suddenly felt different, not like a limitation, but like something he understood. Controlled, measurable, he looked down slightly at the enforcer. You said I don't understand where I am? Elias said. Yes. He nodded once. Maybe not all of it, he admitted, but I do understand pressure. The faint hum in the air shifted. Elias continued. I understand systems that look stable right up until the moment they collapse. I understand what happens when the people holding things together decide they've had enough. The enforcer didn't move, neither did the others. Elias glanced briefly at Lyra just once, then back. You're not here to offer me a choice, he said. You're here because something's already breaking, and you don't know how to stop it. Silence deep, resonant then. For the first time, the enforcer's composure cracked, not visibly, not dramatically, but enough. Correct, it said, Lyra's breath caught. Elias exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders slightly, the confined space creaking again under his presence. All right, he said. Then here's how this works. The enforcer stilled. Elias' voice lowered, not louder, not sharper, just certain. I don't work for empires, he said. Never have. A pause, but, he added, glancing briefly at Lyra again, I do help people. Lyra's expression shifted. Something soft, something steady forming beneath the tension. Elias looked back at the enforcers. So if you want my help, he said, you start by walking out that door and leaving her alone. The air tightened. For a moment it felt like everything might snap. Then, the lead enforcer straightened. It studied him again, no longer as a variable, no longer as an anomaly, but as something else, a factor. You would place conditions, it said. Elias shrugged slightly. I'm human, we're annoying like that. A flicker passed through the other two, something dangerously close to confusion again. Then, slowly, the enforcer stepped back. Very well, it said. Lyra blinked. Elias didn't. This arrangement, the enforcer continued, will be reconsidered. The doorway pulsed open behind them, light shifting as they withdrew. Before leaving, the lead figure paused. Its gaze lingered on Elias one last time. You are not what we expected, it said. Elias gave a faint, tired smile. Yeah, he said, I get that a lot. Then they were gone, the doorway sealed, the light dimmed, and the silence that followed felt different, not empty, full. Lyra stood there for a moment unmoving, then she turned to him. You challenged them, she said quietly. Elias rubbed the back of his neck. Seemed like the thing to do. They could have. I know, he said, a pause. Then she stepped closer, not cautious this time, not hesitant, just certain. You stayed, she said. Elias looked down at her. Yeah, he replied simply. The faint glow of the room settled around them, softer now, steadier. Outside, the distant hum of the city began to return, subtle but changed. Lyra exhaled slowly. This world is shifting, she said. Elias nodded. Then we'll deal with it, he said. She studied him for a moment longer, her luminous eyes no longer filled with uncertainty, but something stronger, trust. It will still be tight, she said. Elias glanced around the small space, then back at her, a quiet grin forming. Yeah, he said, I think I'm getting used to that.